Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We'll just start in a few short minutes, waiting for more people to join.
Hello? Yes, sir, speaking. Yes, sir. I've already logged in.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Rachana, I'm here.
Good evening, Srinivas. Hi, Charu. Hi, Mr. Randy Prasad.
Hello. To see everyone.
Yes. Hi.
Hi, Maitreyi. All set? I think Mr. Gopinath I spoke to just now. He said he'll join in a few minutes.
Sure.
Hi. Hi, Srini. Hi, Vachana. Yuvraj here.
Hi, this is the same Yuvraj. All right.
Yeah.
I am sure there's not more than one Yuvraj in Chennai. Now I know who it is.
Hi, Srinivas. Hi, Vachana.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. Yeah.
Hi. So Vachana, Yuvraj and I also go long back, many years.
I see. Okay. We shall wait for one more minute and then we can start. Hi, Mr. Manuraj. Yeah, glad to have you with us.
Hello, Mr. Manraj. Vanakkam.
Good evening, everyone. எல்லாருக்கும் வணக்கம். என் பேரு மைத்ரேயி. இன்னைக்கு நம்ம தமிழ்நாட்டில் நடக்க இருக்கிற இந்த சட்டசபை தேர்தலை பத்தி பேசுறதுக்காக இங்க கூடியிருக்கோம். அதுலயும் குறிப்பா இந்த சட்டசபை தேர்தலால நகர்ப்புற நிர்வாகம் எப்படி மாற போறது, எப்படி மாறணும் அப்படின்றத பத்தி தான் இன்னைக்கு நம்ம பேச போறோம். இதை நோக்கி தமிழ்நாட்டுல இருக்கிற 2 பெரிய கட்சிகள் திமுக மற்றும் அஇஅதிமுகல இருந்து ரெப்ரசன்டேட்டிவ்ஸ் வந்திருக்காங்க. ஸ்ரீனிவாஸ் சார் சொன்ன மாதிரி கோபிநாத் சார் கொஞ்சம் லேட்டா ஜாயின் பண்ணுவாரு. அதை தவிர்த்து தமிழ்நாட்டுல இருக்கிற சிவில் சொசைட்டி ஆர்கனைசேஷன்ஸ்ல இருந்தும் ரெப்ரசன்டேட்டிவ்ஸ் இன்னைக்கு நம்மள ஜாயின் பண்ணிருக்காங்க. இந்த ஈவெண்ட் வந்துட்டு இந்தியா முழுவதும் மக்கள் பார்ப்பாங்க அப்படின்றதுனால இதை நம்ம தொடர்ந்து இங்கிலீஷ்ல நடத்த போறோம். நீங்க ஆனா தமிழ்லயும் பேசலாம். நீங்க தமிழ்ல சொன்னீங்கன்னா நாங்க அதை சாட் பாக்ஸ்ல எல்லாருக்கும் புரியுற மாதிரி டிரான்ஸ்லேட் பண்ணுவோம். But you can choose to speak in Tamil too. I'd like to start by thanking everybody for joining us this evening for the webinar, Can this Assembly Election Transform Urban Governance in Tamil Nadu? As most of you are aware, Tamil Nadu is the third most urbanized state in the country. And when it comes to mega states, it's the most urbanized state. And yet, there's a lot of scope for reforms when it comes to urban governance in the state. And this is more so because there's not been a core focus when it comes to governance of cities in the state. Right? So taking the context of the assembly elections happening in the state, we've gathered this panel today to understand and discuss how do we get this political discussion on urban governance into the mainstream? How do we leverage this platform of elections, so as to transform the state of urban governance in Tamil Nadu? So towards this, we have a very esteemed panel with us today to join the discussion. First of all, we have Ms. Charu Govindan, who is the founder and member of Voice of People Chennai with us. Voice of People is a civil society organization that focuses on enabling and strengthening participatory democracy in urban governance. We also have with us Mr. Manuraj Shanmugasundaram, who is the national spokesperson for Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam. He is also a practicing lawyer in the Madras High Court. We also have with us Mr. Prashant Gautam, a volunteer with Arapur Iyakam, an organization that believes in citizen empowerment and anti-corruption. Lastly, we have with us Mr. Yuvraj Anjali Loganathan, who is the Joint Secretary for the Research Wing at Satta Panchayat Iyakam, an organization that focuses on policy research and advocacy. As mentioned earlier, Mr. Gopinathan, who's the spokesperson for Anna Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam, will also be joining us shortly for the panel discussion. I will now request my colleague Vachana to make a short presentation on the state of urban governance. Before that, I'm also very happy to announce that we are streaming live on the social media platforms of Satta Panchayat Iyakam, as well as the Voice of People Chennai social media platforms, along with the Janagraha social media platforms. Over to you, Vachana, to give an overview of the urban governance in Tamil Nadu.
Thank you, Maitri. A very warm good evening, everyone. I will be taking you through the urban governance landscape of Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu, basically the land of first municipal corporation in India and perhaps one of the oldest municipal corporations in the world, with the constitution of Madras Municipal Corporation in 1687. Today, Tamil Nadu is the third most urbanized state in India with 48.45% of urban population. It has 10 municipal corporations and 148 municipalities. And these city governments are governed by 16 separate municipal legislations, with separate legislations for 10 municipal corporations and 5 select municipalities. In addition, there is a District Municipalities Act for other municipalities and town panchayats in the state. Tamil Nadu has 3 million plus cities, essentially metropolitan cities. Chennai, Coimbatore, and Madurai, and 2 more cities will be added in the next cycle of census, Salem and Tiruchirappalli. What you're seeing in the slide, that map essentially captures the urban clusters in Tamil Nadu. And that analysis shows that 9.3% of Tamil Nadu lives in 3 million plus cities, essentially Chennai, Coimbatore, and Madurai. And 14% of the state population resides within a 60-kilometer radius of these million plus cities. Cities by itself are basically engines of economic growth. And this potential is way higher in case of metropolitan cities because of agglomeration benefit and scale.
இப்போ நம்ம தமிழ்நாட்டில் எடுத்துக்கிட்டிங்கன்னா வந்துட்டு மில்லியன் பிளஸ் சிட்டிஸ், அதாவது 10 லட்சத்துக்கும் மேல மக்கள் தொகை இருக்கிற நகரம் 3 இருக்கு. சென்னை, கோயம்புத்தூர், மதுரை. இதுல பாத்தீங்கன்னா 9.3% மக்கள் வந்துட்டு இந்த 3 நகரத்துல இருக்காங்க. ஆனா இந்த நகரத்துல இருக்கிற 60 கிலோமீட்டர் ரேடியஸ் எடுத்துக்கிட்டீங்கன்னா 14% மக்கள் வந்துட்டு இந்த 60 கிலோமீட்டர் ரேடியஸ்ல இருக்காங்க. இது வந்து ஒரு பெரிய ஒரு ஆப்பர்ச்சுனிட்டி நம்ம தமிழ்நாட்டுக்கு. இங்கேருந்து வந்து ஒரு எக்கனாமிக் பொட்டன்ஷியல வந்து இது பண்றது வந்து இது ஒரு பெரிய ஆப்பர்ச்சுனிட்டி.
However, a city's ability to attract investment and good talent essentially rests with how well it's able to give good quality infrastructure and services. If you take a look at the urban service delivery in Tamil Nadu, perhaps it offers a very weak picture. So if you look at the status of water supply in cities and towns of Tamil Nadu, about 40% has either average or below average quality of water supply. Only 68% of the generated waste is treated in Tamil Nadu cities, and 72.59% of households are not connected to sewer networks. We hear urban issues getting repeated like a looped record in Tamil Nadu, be it cyclones and floods or drought, of lack of unplanned urbanization, lack of planned urbanization, the resulting urban sprawl, issues of solid waste management, or be it traffic congestion or lack of affordable housing. Every year we hear the same issues getting repeated. We conducted a poll as a part of run up to this event to understand from the citizens of Tamil Nadu what is the significant quality of life challenge that they believe in. And 57% responded and identified water supply as the biggest quality of life challenge of urban Tamil Nadu, followed by solid waste management and sanitation, climate change, and affordable housing.
இப்போ நம்ம தமிழ்நாட்டுல பாத்தீங்கன்னா ஒரே பிரச்சனை தான் மறுபடியும் நடந்துட்டு இருக்கு. அது வந்து புயலா இருக்கட்டும், இல்ல குப்பை பிரச்சனையா இருக்கட்டும், இல்ல வந்து திட்டமிடாத வளர்ச்சியா இருக்கட்டும். இதை நோக்கி நாங்க வந்து எங்களோட சிட்டி பிளாட்ஃபார்ம்ல வந்துட்டு, சிட்டி பாலிடிக்ஸ் பிளாட்ஃபார்ம்ல வந்துட்டு நாங்க வந்து மக்கள் கிட்ட கேட்டோம், உங்களை பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் தமிழ்நாட்டுல இருக்கிற நகரங்கள்ல எது ரொம்ப பெரிய பிரச்சனையா இருக்கு உங்களுக்கு அப்படின்னு கேட்கும்போது நிறைய மக்கள் வந்து திரும்பி என்ன சொன்னாங்கன்னா, தண்ணி பிரச்சனை தான் வந்து இருக்கிறதுலயே ரொம்ப பெரிய பிரச்சனை எங்களுக்கு அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு சொல்லியிருக்காங்க.
Now, the ability of a city to deliver good quality of life essentially depends on how robust are its city systems, essentially referring to how robust its urban governance systems are. So all these quality of life challenges that we just discussed, like water supply or solid waste management or even climate change for that matter, are essentially symptoms of a larger malaise, and the root causes being lying in the city systems. Now, if we keep this as a framework, there are 4 components to it. One is urban planning and design, whether the city is able to prepare its own plans, implement it and enforce it. Second is urban capacities, where we look at finances, human resources, and use of information technology for process efficiency. And third is how empowered are cities, mayors, and councils. And last, transparency, accountability, and participation. So all of these 4 components, which are essentially what forms a city systems, are interrelated yet extremely distinct. And all of these 4 components need to come together for a city to deliver good quality of life.
இப்போ ஒரு நகரத்துல இருக்கிற மக்கள் கிட்ட வந்து நம்ம அவங்களோட வாழ்க்கை தரம் வந்து எப்படி இருக்கு அப்படின்னு பார்க்கணும்னு நினைச்சோம்னா, அதை வந்து நம்ம முதல்ல அந்த நகரத்துல வந்து நகர அமைப்பு எப்படி இருக்கு அப்படின்றத வந்து நம்ம புரிஞ்சுக்கணும். அமைப்பு அப்படின்னு சொல்லும்போது நாங்க இங்க என்ன சொல்றோம்னா, அந்த நகரத்துல இருக்கிற சட்டம், கொள்கை, நிர்வாகம், செயல்முறை இதெல்லாம் எப்படி இருக்கு அப்படின்றதான் வந்து நாங்க பார்க்கணும் அப்படின்னு சொல்றோம்.
Now, if we take a look at how is the state of urban governance in Tamil Nadu, it's very interesting to note that Tamil Nadu is a pioneer in 4 urban governance reforms in the country. So in case of statewide accounting reforms, mobilization of external and commercial finance for infrastructure development, and Tamil Nadu Urban Development Fund was the pioneering urban financial intermediary in perhaps in the country. And it was one of the first states to form state finance commissions, and has also been adhering with the devolution of funds based on state finance commissions recommendations to ULBs. And a very key reform, professionalization of municipal cadre, has also been undertaken by Tamil Nadu. Now let's take a closer look at the state of urban governance in Tamil Nadu from a city systems angle. So let's take a look at the pluses in case of urban governance. So it has Tamil Nadu has a 5-year mayoral tenure, 50% of reservation for women in municipal elections, timely constitution of state finance commissions, ward committees and area sabhas, formal platforms for citizen engagement have been provided by law, public disclosure law for effective disclosure of civic data has been provided by law, 10% of state revenues are shared with urban local bodies, It is one among the very few states that has devolved entertainment tax post the GST Act coming into picture. The cities have powers over budget setting. The mega city like Chennai is doing relatively much better on financial performance with 3-year average per capita capex of 4,088. It has access to municipal cadre, and there is a very interesting situation of a local body ombudsman appointed to conduct inquiry on allegations against city governments. Only 3 states in India actually has such provisions. Now let's take a look at how things can be better. There has not been municipal elections in any of the urban local bodies in the state since 2011. SEC, state election commissions, while constituted, are not empowered to do ward delimitation process, which means there is no independent body to undertake such a significant exercise. The state has reversed direct election of mayor. The mayor has limited powers over funds, functions, and functionaries. It has devolved only 8 out of the 18 functions under the 12th schedule in practice to urban local bodies. Ward committees, while provided by law, are non-functional, similar in case of area sabas. It is one of the 2 states, the only 2 states in India to not have Right to Services Act. Open data are not standards are not adopted by cities. Metropolitan planning committees are not constituted in all metropolitan cities, and we have just seen how critical metropolitan cities are to the economy of Tamil Nadu and even to the national economy as well. In Chennai, Metropolitan Planning Committee has been constituted, but it is defunct. The average staff vacancy in key positions in urban local bodies of Tamil Nadu is roughly about 18.8%. No mandates for a medium-term fiscal plan for urban local bodies, which is very key to ensuring fiscal prudence of urban local bodies. No mandates on audits by external chartered accountants or internal audits. While there is a local body ombudsman in the state, but they are not empowered for service-related issues, which is a problem which has been provided by states like Kerala and Odisha. We conducted a similar poll with the citizens of Tamil Nadu to understand what do they perceive as a systemic challenge in urban Tamil Nadu, and 50% responded saying disempowered mayor and council, followed by lack of platforms for citizen participation, which is very interesting to see because these are all interlinked, because naturally absence of an elected council basically means there will not be platforms for citizen participation like ward committees and area sabas. This was followed by 16.67% responding for poor municipal capacities, referring to human resources and financial capacities, and finally 11.11% on weak planning.
இப்ப நம்ம தமிழ்நாட்டுல வந்து நீங்க பாத்தீங்கன்னா சில விஷயங்கள்ல வந்து தமிழ்நாடு வந்து முன்னோடியா இருக்கு. ஆனா சில விஷயங்கள்ல வந்து இன்னும் முன்னேற்றத்துக்கு நிறைய வாய்ப்பு இருக்கு அப்படின்ற மாதிரி தான் நம்ம வந்து பாக்குறோம். இதை நோக்கி நாங்க வந்து ஒரு விஷயம் என்ன பண்ணோம்னா இன்னொன்னு ஒரு கருத்து கணிப்பு எடுத்தோம். அதாவது தமிழ்நாட்டுல நகர்ப்புற நிர்வாகத்துல அந்த அமைப்புல வந்து எது பெரிய பிரச்சனையா இருக்கு அப்படின்றத கேட்டு ஒரு சின்ன கருத்து கணிப்பு எடுத்தோம். அதுல பாத்தீங்கன்னா நிறைய பேர் என்ன சொல்றாங்கன்னா மேயர் அண்ட் கவுன்சிலர் அவங்களோட இயலாமை தான் வந்து ஒரு பெரிய பிரச்சனையா இருக்கு அப்படின்றாங்க. இது வந்து முன்னாடி வச்சனா அவர்கள் சொன்ன மாதிரி இதுல ஒரு காரணம் வந்துட்டு மேயர் வந்து அவங்க தேர்தலே நடக்காம இருக்கிறதுனாலதான் இது வந்து ஒரு பெரிய பிரச்சனையா இருக்கு. அதை தவிர்த்து அடுத்த பிரச்சனை அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு மக்கள் சொல்றதை பாத்தீங்கன்னா மக்கள் வந்து ஜனநாயகத்துல பங்கேற்பதற்கு வந்து ஒரு பிளாட்ஃபார்ம் இல்ல அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு சொல்றாங்க. அது வந்து அகைன் அவங்க சொன்ன மாதிரி ஆப்சன்ஸ் ஆஃப் வார்ட் கமிட்டி, அதனாலதான் வந்து இந்த ஒரு பிரச்சனை வருது.
And today we are going to have an esteemed panel with us to actually discuss, to see how some of these issues can influence the upcoming assembly election in the state. And let's take a quick look at some of the focus areas of today's discussion. One, will cities see regular conduct of municipal elections? As we have already seen, no urban local body elections since 2011 in the entire state, which means 158 cities in Tamil Nadu do not have an elected government.
இன்னைக்கு வந்து நம்ம என்ன பார்க்க போறோம்னா இந்த சட்டசபை தேர்தலுக்கு அப்புறம் தமிழ்நாட்டுல இருக்கிற நகர்ப்புற தேர்தல் வந்து நடக்குமா அப்படின்றது. ஏன்னா நீங்க பாத்தீங்கன்னா 2016க்கு அப்புறம் எந்த நகராட்சியிலுமே தேர்தல் நடக்கல நம்ம தமிழ்நாட்டுல.
And can this assembly election bring back directly elected mayoral system? It's very interesting to note that Tamil Nadu, at every tenure of a new government coming into power, has have a reversal from direct or indirect election. In 2001, it was directly elected mayor. 2006, going back to indirect election. 2011, again coming back to direct election. 2016, again saw a reversal of indirect election, but as we know, the election hasn't happened. In 2021, as we stand today, there is again conversation whether we are going to have direct elected mayor again.
இந்த தேர்தலுக்கு அப்புறம், இந்த சட்டசபை தேர்தலுக்கு அப்புறம் மக்களே மறுபடியும் மேயரை வந்து தேர்ந்தெடுக்கிற மாதிரி ஒரு சிஸ்டம் வருமா அப்படின்றதும் வந்து இன்னொரு கேள்வி.
A very important aspect on citizen participation. Will cities of Tamil Nadu be able to have functional ward committees? While ward committees have been mandated, but they're not functional, as we have already seen. Another problem is the structure of ward committee itself. In Tamil Nadu, especially in case of municipal corporation, instead of ward committee, the provisions is for wards committees. If you look at Chennai, for example, Chennai has just one ward committee per zone. There are 15 zones. There are a total number of 15 ward committees. That means for a city with 200 electoral wards, which means a ward committee on an average will have 13 wards clubbed together, which is essentially against the principles of 74th CA in furthering grassroots democracy and ensuring social justice.
இன்னொரு விஷயம் நம்ம என்ன பார்க்க போறோம்னா, இந்த தேர்தலுக்கு அப்புறம் தமிழ்நாட்டுல இருக்கிற நகரங்கள்ல வார்ட் கமிட்டி அப்படின்றது வந்து செயல்பாட்டுக்கு வருமா அப்படின்னு. சட்டப்படி பாத்தீங்கன்னா வார்ட் கமிட்டி அப்படின்றது இருக்கு, ஆனா இது வந்து செயல்பாட்டுல இல்ல. சோ இது திரும்பி வருமா, இது வந்து செயல்பாட்டுல வருமா அப்படின்றது வந்து ஒரு பெரிய கேள்வி.
And finally, will cities of Tamil Nadu be adopting participatory budgeting system, essentially meaning taking citizen inputs in the municipal budgeting process itself? Currently, it has not been mandated by any of the municipal legislations in Tamil Nadu, nor any cities have adopted the system in Tamil Nadu. Let's see whether the 16th Assembly election will be able to offer this.
கடைசியா நம்ம இன்னொன்னு என்ன பார்க்க போறோம்னா, தமிழ்நாட்டுல இருக்கிற நகரங்கள்ல பார்ட்டிசிபேட்டரி பட்ஜெட்டிங், அதாவது மக்கள் வந்து பட்ஜெட் உருவாக்குறதுல பங்கேற்று அதை வந்து அடாப்ட் பண்ற ஒரு பயிற்சி ஒண்ணு வருமா அப்படின்றத வந்து நம்ம பார்க்கணும்.
In the upcoming panel discussion, we are going to discuss these focus areas along with few more other topics. Stay tuned. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vachana. We will now move on to the moderated panel discussion session. We will now have the panel discussion on the topic, Can the Assembly Election Transform Urban Governance in Tamil Nadu? This panel will be moderated by Srinivas Alavalli, who is the head of civic participation team in Janagraha. This panel will also be followed by a moderated Q&A session, and we request all the participants to ask your questions in the Q&A box available in the below, and indicate the panelists from whom you would like the response to come from as well. We once again welcome all of you to the 12th City Politics webinar. Over to you, Srinivas.
Thank you, Maitri. Thank you, Vachana. Ellorukum swagatam, City Politics webinar. Prashant has joined us, but his camera is not on. So if the admin, Vishwa, you could help him with that. Let's get him on audio and video. There he is. Hi, good evening, Prashant. Okay.
Hi, good evening, Srinivas. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, thanks. We are still waiting for our representative from AIDMK, Mr. Gopinath. He, when I spoke to him a few minutes back, he said he was on the road. I could hear a lot of noise, so he said he will find a quiet place and join in. Frankly, we are very pleasantly surprised that political party people are able to find time for a discussion like this in the middle of a very heated election campaign, but we are very grateful for them to join, especially Mr. Manuraj Shanmugasundaram. He's also actually on the campaign trail right now, but he'll be joining the discussion actively from about 6:15 or so is what I was told. Right, Vachana? Okay, great. So Maitri and Vachana gave you a glimpse of what Janagraha analyzed as the urban governance situation in Tamil Nadu. We are all familiar with it, more or less. It was presented mostly for the audience that are joining us today, people that are maybe unfamiliar with what urban governance, the landscape of that is in Tamil Nadu. And it's notwithstanding the governance aspects of it, in terms of urbanization, I think Tamil Nadu is a pride of India. The number of cities, the number of urban centers, the places where people can find jobs within the state without having to all migrate to the capital city, Chennai. These are all very positive, nice things about Tamil Nadu development in the last several decades. The fact that there are functional airports in multiple cities, busy airports, is another indicator of the economic activity that happens. Not that it means everything is great, but it just conveys that there is significant economic activity and so on. But the topic of discussion today is that are these cities that are already there, the big cities that Vachana was referring to, on the upcoming cities and the urban agglomerations, meaning the larger metropolitan areas in and around, say, Chennai, Coimbatore, and Madurai, and all these places. Do they have the right set of framework, governance framework, for them to thrive, for urban, Tamil Nadu citizens to get all the facilities and services that one would expect in any modern, city that we're all aspiring to be? And they don't necessarily need to be very aspirational goals. They can be very fundamental goals, from clean drinking water to, mosquitoes-free, dengue-free rainy season. And of course, we hear very big, not so happy news about flooding that visits once in a while makes international news in Chennai, which is something we analyzed the urban flooding in India, and we can tell you that this is a phenomenon. Almost every large city, every mega city has urban flooding in India. And if you dig deeper into the root causes of it, it almost looks like the same story repeats in every city. So there is the reason why these things happen, and that's the city systems framework that we at Janagraha like to think about in terms of how the cities are evolving. So let's have a discussion today with all of these wonderful folks that are joining us. I'm very pleased to be in this webinar with many of the folks in Tamil Nadu that I've associated with for some time now in one way or other, and also with the political ecosystem of Tamil Nadu. So let me start by going to Charu first. Not everyone here may be familiar with Voice of People's origin and the main work. I know Vachana Maitreyi has given an introduction, but maybe you should start with that and then tell me what you think are your expectations in these elections. What I mean by that is there, in this election, one of the biggest news in Tamil Nadu is the, stay-at-home mom work, women at home, right? Paying them whatever the basic income, universal basic income, 1,500. One party said 1,000, another party said 1,500. That seems to be a big topic of discussion. Very, very big, manifesto item on which people are talking about. Are there any such things for urban governance? If there are, what are they? And if they're not, what do you think they should be? So you can talk about these things, and I'll pass on the same question to my friends Yoraj and Prashant after this. Go ahead, Charu.
Hi, Srinivas. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. You guys able to hear me well?
Yes.
And thank you, Vachana and Maitreyi, for a very informative introduction on the urban governance and where we are in Tamil Nadu. It was very, very useful and interesting. And Srinivas, how many minutes I can take for this answer?
You can take 2 minutes.
Okay. So I'm here representing a group called Voice of People, a civil society group. And we are not political commentators or experts, or I would not like to introduce myself or my group like that. We are basically concerned citizens. And yes, at the area where we really lacked as citizens, even when Vachana was asking for a short bio, that is what I said. We are a group of concerned citizens, because for all these years, with any other title we can relate to is how concerned we are as citizens here. Because, you can choose not to be interested in politics, but you cannot choose to be not affected by it. That is what it is. We won't even call ourselves activists, because activists are to some extent selfless, but we are selfish because we are selfish and we worry about the various ways the governance affect our everyday life. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, everything is affected by the governance. And what we as citizens can do, that was the force united some of us in Chennai and made us to come to the streets and demand transparency and accountability from our elected representatives 4 years back. That is how we united. And yes, raising our voice is important, demanding the transparency and accountability from our elected representatives even more important, but protesting is only one step. What we have to do as citizens constructively to demand This was the next question we were facing, and we realized our participation was completely lacking. We elected our representatives, and then we let them do what they're supposed to do. And we realized the checks and balances which was created in the system is also not working. And as citizens, since we were not participating, we kind of let that thing whole lack. So we wanted to participate constructively. We wanted to participate effectively in a meaningful ways so that, we can demand transparency and accountability, because that is the only way we can have effective governance here. In that path, we found in Tamil Nadu, and unfortunately, yes, Tamil Nadu is a very, very progressive state in various aspects, but in local governance and in enabling citizens' participation and in devolving power to the local governments, Tamil Nadu is very, very, very backward. தமிழகமா நாங்க தலைகுனிய வேணும் இந்த விஷயத்துல. I need to say this in Tamil because we are very ashamed, because it's been almost a quarter century, 25 years since 73rd and 74th Amendment came. Yes, we were started when we got independence. We were started as a representative democracy. We are supposed to elect our representatives, and they are supposed to make laws and govern for us. But somewhere the Constitution wanted us to this year participate with democracy. That is why 73rd and 74th amendments came into place. And but even though the laws were there, and then the first election was done in 1996, still the participation for people to the stakeholders of democracy to directly participate in the governance is zero in Tamil Nadu, especially in the urban side. Yes, on the rural side, we have Grama Sabhas and everything, but still the power devolution is really, really lacking. The empowerment is really, really lacking. It is very, very sorry state of affairs that I need to say the Panchayat presidents are doing a protest now to demand money. கையில காசு எந்திரத்து பிச்சை எடுக்கிற மாதிரி protest பண்றாங்க. Is that the way our state government has kept the Panchayat presidents? The empowerment is yet I looked at the topic you guys were talking about empowered mayors. First, we need to talk about empowering the councillors, empowering the Panchayat presidents. We need to go from the bottom up layer. We need to talk about the planning. As citizens, we need to participate in the planning. Our voices need to be heard in Grama Sabhas and Area Sabhas. From there, it has to go to ward committees. From there, it has to go to council. From there, it has to go to city government. From there, it has to go to state. And then it has to go to central. That is how a unified city or state can flourish in democracy. And we are continuously working for that. And coming back, that is giving the background about our group. Coming back to the question of this particular session, can this assembly election transform the urban governance in Tamil Nadu? That is the question, right? And I really wish whether I can say, yes, it would transform, but unfortunately, I cannot. I really wish, but I cannot, because election is not the reason why we are here, why the governance is in this state. The reason is the political will. The political will in the state has been not to give the power devolution to the local self-governments. The local self-governments are just viewed as offices, executive offices for the state government to execute their commands and schemes. They are not viewed as a local self-governments. In fact, in our manifesto, as a collective initiated by a group called Tanachi, we are all part of the collective Voice of People, Arapur, Institute of Grassroots Governance, Thoran Yekam, and Tanachi. We created a manifesto specifically for decentralization of local governance. So I would like to share the Google link for this. And we have presented this to all the political parties. Basically, this Tamil Nadu state is, demanding the federalism from the central government, and it is demanding autonomous in the state government. At the same time, it's not ready to do all the power with the local Savarkar. That is our major challenge here. So the solution for all the questions will be the decentralization. Decentralization of the powers and devolution of proper funds, functions, and functionalities has to be clearly mapped and executed. Yes, we have great laws, everything in paper, but in spirit, nothing is there. That is the ugly truth and painful truth. So I will stop here now and then we'll continue. Thank you.
Yeah, there's so many follow-ups I want to go there, but I will curb my enthusiasm and I'll bring in Prashant into this. Prashant, You missed the initial part. There was a brief intro about you and your group, but you could tell us what is Arapur, what does it do, and why are you working with them? And then take on the bigger question. Do you see that this elections being a forum or a period of time in which the agenda for urban governance reform can be pushed? Is it happening, not happening? Do you agree with Charu? How do you see this season of elections with related to the work that we do? So go ahead.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So first, I'll take the second part of the question first. Whether this election is going to change anything on the ground, right? So one thing that I expect is after the state elections, the municipal elections will happen for the urban areas. That's something which I am kind of confident about, right? It's only because the current ruling government did not want to, was not ready to face the elections, right? So that's the main concern. So that much I know that it will happen. The local body elections will happen in the urban areas as well. But however, the concept of 73rd Amendment and 74th Amendment, the Ward Sabhas and Area Sabhas, for which the amendments were brought about in 2010 in the Chennai Corporation Municipality Act. That and all those modifications, as well as the amendments, the rules that we provided as a citizen group, right? All those things, would they be implemented is the bigger question, right? So that citizens power devolution, would it happen? That's the larger question which we need to be talking about. That I don't think will ever happen, even if the opposition DMK comes into power. I do not see that happening at all, right? Though DMK is working on at the grassroots level for Grama Sabha and everything. I don't know what kind of powers they're going to be providing to the Ward Sabhas and the Area Sabhas. So that is something which is still a big question mark. Also, as part of Arapur, right? One thing that we have requested is, let me just. We have also asked, apart from these, the Area Sabhas and Ward Sabhas, we have also asked for Participation Social Audit Act, Citizens Participation Social Audit Act, right? This is also present in Meghalaya. So this act, wherein people can actually participate and audit government projects, right? And government implementations of works, right? So these kinds of things, if they bring about a framework for that, so that would enable a real transparency in governance in the local bodies, and even for distribution of welfare measures and things like that. This is going to be helping in a larger way. So these are all the points that are very, very important, and I see as critical. Now, coming to the first part of your question, as to what we are doing from Arapur. We do, I wrote a post on that about, how we conduct the Know Your Rights program,
Right.
which is, basically related to, empowering citizens, making a normal common man know about.
Yeah, let me pause you for a second. So
Okay.
what Prashant's talking about is a citizen connect outreach program that Arapur has been running for several years. They go to different parts of the city and hold a meeting. They call it Know Your Rights. And now, please continue.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Just a context. So basically this program, we advertise it nicely and, make sure that common people come and understand, right? So how do you take care of your own street, right? Start with your street. You step out of your house, you're going to land on your street. So if your street has potholes, if your street has leaking sewage, how do you take care of that? How do you get that issue resolved, right? So our Chennai Corporation, due to some fantastic officials, good, well-intentioned officials, they got a complaint system which is existing here. Okay, thankfully, it still works. The system works. It's just that people need to be using it enough to take care of their urban, civic issues, right? So that's all there is to it. So we give them case studies on how we resolved, several problems in our own areas in a very humorous way, in a very understandable, common way, to make sure that, the common people are willing to take up that initiative and do that, right? So we tell them how addictive it is to us. So whenever we go out, we put a complaint, whichever area we go, we launch a complaint and we get that fixed. So it's become an addiction to us, so that's the way we, spread the message and take it up, so that people actually take it up in a larger way. So this is what our Know Your Rights program is all about. And apart from that, we also do RTA sessions. That's for a little, advanced topic, right? So not for everybody, not for the common man.
Okay.
So the major initiative what we took on the local bodies front is we started a program called the Ward Leaders Program, right? So basically what we did was the Chennai Corporation, we don't have, councillors coming up anyway. So we thought we can empower common citizens as ward leaders, Arapur ward leaders, and make them do all the civic work. So today in a corporation, in Chennai Corporation, we have 200 wards. Out of that, we have 160 ward leaders team, out of which 120 are active ward leaders in their respective wards. So this is, a great initiative, which I have myself, seen that, it's working well. So these ward leaders go about, fixing the problems in their areas, in the fronts of, roads, UPHCs, water distribution, writing RTAs, and, getting, water distributed to slums in their areas. So several things that have been happening, even UPHCs, going and auditing UPHCs and writing to the concerned authorities if the doctors are not there, whatever, right? Taking it up and making sure that it is taken care of. So this is what is our initiative on this regard.
Great, wonderful. So just grassroots democracy, not just talking about it, but actually getting people to act on it. So now let me call Yuvraj onto the stage, onto the Zoom stage, Yuvraj. The last time I saw you, I think it was in tribal Odisha, Kalamandi. So it's nice to meet you on Zoom here. So tell a little bit about Satta Panchayat, what they do, and address the question on the table. 2 minutes. Sure. 2 minutes. Yeah. Strict enforcement from now on.
Definitely. So we at Satta Panchayat, the organization was started with the intention of fighting corruption and the liquor menace that is spread out across Tamil Nadu. So that was the two goals based on which the organization was started in 2013. But then later we spread out. Once the organization started spreading in multiple districts, we made our goal good governance as our goal. So we have been conducting multiple training sessions on RTI, and we also have a call center on how to handle bribe asking officers in government offices. And in relevance to the local bodies we are talking about, we have conducted a model Grama Sabha. Actually, we have conducted 3 model stuff. One is the model Women Parliament, and a model Assembly, and a model Grama Sabha. Out of these 3, it was for the model Grama Sabha, we got 100+ participants. On the other 2, we had got around 50 participants, whereas for the model Grama Sabha, we got around 100+ participants. So basically, it is the local body, it is the problems with the local body that directly affects the citizens. So this higher participation in the Grama Sabha showed like people really wanted to get their problems solved through local bodies. So this is about Satta Panchayat on a brief note, because the time is just 2 minutes. And to ask the question with respect to the Tamil Nadu Assembly election, I don't know, we can't do a guesswork what's going to happen after the election. But considering the 2 major players that we have in Tamil Nadu Assembly election, DMK and ADMK, and taking a look back at their past track record, I just had a look at DMK's manifesto for the year 2016 assembly election. In that document, the very second point talks about state autonomy, but there is not a single word that talks about local bodies. That's with the DMK. They did not even talk about local bodies in the last assembly election. And taking ADMK, we need not look at their manifesto. We have seen their performance in the last 5 years lively. They were not even ready to conduct elections for the local bodies. So that's the past track record of these two parties. And to add a few more points, we know Chennai is the second oldest corporation after London. So Chennai Corporation had mayors since 17th century with a brief gap during the British period. But even after independence, there was mayor election happening every year in Chennai. But it was during DMK's regime in 1973, when Karunanidhi was the chief minister, the Chennai Corporation was suspended until the 74th Amendment came in. And again, taking the other side, the ADMK, Madurai is one of the oldest corporation along with Coimbatore and Trichy. So it was during ADMK's period when MGR was the chief minister, the elections to the Madurai Corporation was suspended in somewhere in the 1980s, mid 1980s. So only after the 74th Amendment came in, the parties started conducting elections because it was made mandatory. But in the last term, which was supposed to be 2016 to 2021, we did not have any election. So that's again, we had a very big political drama in late 2016. That was when the election was supposed to happen, but that did not happen. So considering the past track record, I'm confident that the election will happen after the assembly election. I mean, the local body election will happen somewhere in the 2021 end. But when it comes to empowering the local bodies, I think it's still a distant dream.
Fascinating, because for such a politically active state and active citizenry with a long history of reform and progressive legislation, how come from 2016 till now there hasn't been a hue and cry about not holding elections for the local bodies, and that is not something that the political parties are discussing now in the context of elections? Or is it is the people are aware of why that is so and they accepted it, and let's move on and let's wait for this assembly election to get over with, then we have the election? Is this the mindset of the media and the people right now? Is that why it's not seen as a major problem? Any one of you can jump in. I'll tell you something that a corporator in Bangalore told me recently. It's going to be 6 months in Bangalore without the council. The council term ended and they haven't held elections, using the usual excuses and all kinds of stories about delimitation, this, that. They're not held elections. There is no council right now. So 6 months of that period is getting over, and we are planning to organize a discussion around that. And the councillor asked me, sir, next time when the assembly election term ends for the MLAs, can you tell them to wait for 6 months before the next election? And then they'll understand what that means, right? So is that feeling not there in Tamil Nadu? Is it not coming out? What about the civil society groups? I know all of you guys are demanding ward committees, ward sabhas and all that, but the elections itself, it doesn't seem to be high on the list of agenda. And why is that? Any of you can jump in and answer that. You're on mute, Charu.
So since 2016, local body election didn't happen in Tamil Nadu. And, the major reason is also media, right? The importance to the local body elections, and people are around. Mostly people are with their own issues, and what media puts as a news, that's what we are all going behind. So local body election was not even considered as an issue in Tamil Nadu. And civil society groups have to jump in. The case was already it's totally a political reason. For people who know, it's exactly only the political reason for not conducting the election. They can blame it on, case by the opposition party, or they can blame it on ward limitation, or in the case in the court, anything. But truth is, no court has said election should not be done. But unfortunately, the case was in the Supreme Court, so the civil societies cannot do anything. And the media didn't even worry about it. And end of the day, after all the political reasons, finally they did it in the end of 2019. That too, for the very first time, they split the elections into rural and urban, because that is the proof to show that the ruling ADMK government didn't want to do the elections. If at all they want to say it's all only because of these cases we didn't do the election, once the cases is done, once the delimitation process is done, they should have done the election for both rural and urban. Why didn't they split the elections? There was never in the history of Tamil Nadu local body election, they split these elections. So basically for their political advantage and political fear, they split the election. They didn't even want to run the elections. And media, as usual, always kept the focus on the noises and not on the issues. Unfortunately, that is the major reason.
Let me bring Prashant into this. Prashant, are people not missing these 200 councillors in your city? You have MPs and MLAs and councillors are missing. Are they happy with not having councillors because they have these ward leaders from Arappur and they're getting the job done? Is that why nobody cares about councillors, or what's going on?
No, to be true, we are too small, people to actually scale up to that level. Though we do some menial stuff, right? So, having said that, I think people are definitely not really caring about it. The common people don't know much about all these things, right? Where it really impacts is, for example, you take ECR. In ECR, the Chennai Corporation took 285 crores or something loan from KFW Bank just to implement a stormwater drain project in a beach sand area, where even in 2015 floods, there was no flood there. But they want a stormwater drain there. But however, the people of that area are asking about drainage system, sewerage system, which is not available for them, but they are not getting it, right? So where the expenditure needs to actually happen, that is not happening. Why is this so? Because they have put special officers instead of these elected representatives. The government, the ruling AIDMK government, I believe, is very happy with these special officers, and that's also one of the reasons why they did not conduct the elections. For me, in my view, I feel that these special officers would have no objections, because even if AIDMK had to contest the elections and win the local body elections, they would not get all the 200 votes for themselves. This is a perfect time for them to conduct elections and also take care of all the 200 votes, all the contract works that is going on in the 200 votes, and rest.
What about the MLAs? What about the MLAs? The MLAs will be from different. Are the MLAs acting like corporators in the absence of actual corporators?
Yeah, I mean, always the demarcation is very mixed up here, right? Because there's never been a proper demarcation as such, where the MLAs will only be legislating laws. No, that's never happened. They've always, to show development for people, MLAs are the ones who are actually doing it. That's a kind of, hypnosis which have been done to the common people, right? So, so that is maintained, of course. But in my opinion, the elections did not happen only because of this. One, they were not willing to face the elections. Secondly, they found it very convenient with the special officers and their complete control over all 200 watts, so that they can do any contract works for their own needs. Yeah.
Maitri,
Mr. Manuraj has joined.
Yeah. Mr. Manuraj, who is the national media spokesperson for DMK, has joined us right now. Welcome, sir, to the panel. Vishwa, can you please spotlight him? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Maitri, for that welcome. I've actually been listening, though I've had my video turned off because I had a couple of other engagements, but I did listen, and you will hopefully realize that I was listening. Firstly, thank you, Janagraha, for putting this together. Thank you, Mr. Srinivas, for your opening remarks. Mr. Srinivas, I'm actually surprised that you are surprised that political parties would be present at an event like this, because we do take public discourse around urban issues very seriously. We've been following the work of Janagraha for a very long time. In fact, some of your former leadership members are presently in very powerful positions in the Chennai Smart City Limited. So we do know the importance of having great allies in the civil and social advocacy space. Thank you, Maitreyi and Vachna. I hope I've got the name right, for your excellent presentation. Like I said, though I wasn't on camera, I was listening and I found it very useful in the way you contextualize the issues and how you laid out the presentation. The speakers that came before me, Ms. Charu Govindan, I completely appreciate and understand what your points you were making about decentralization. I do admit that it is a problem. It is something that I think as a state, as you said, as a progressive state, we have not been able to do enough of. And I certainly do hope that that will change. And municipalities and panchayats and corporations will not just be outposts, or as you called it, executive arms of the state government. I think they need to be more evolved in letter and spirit. Mr. Prashant Gautam, I was happy to hear your Mr. Prashant Gautam, I was happy to hear your speech on the right to know. And of course, you know, I do know a little bit about Arappur Iyakam, and I've been following your work with regard to all aspects of governance in the state of Tamil Nadu quite closely. So I was happy to hear you as well. Mr. Yuvaraj, again, thank you for telling us a little bit about Satta Panchayat Ekam. Of course, we do now know more about it because I think your president is now standing for election with Mr. Kamal Hassan's party, and I wish him the best through you. And of course, just to quickly answer your question about the DMK manifesto, as you would appreciate, that was a state manifesto. It was a state assembly election in 2016. So of course, had they announced a series of elections in the rural bodies and the urban local bodies, we would have put out urban local body specific and rural local body specific manifestos as well. That is why perhaps you did not see much there about local bodies in the 2016 State Assembly Manifesto. But what Yuvraj has pointed out is, I think, raised a larger issue and perhaps a very poignant issue that I could perhaps start my few minutes on, which is that do people in the state of Tamil Nadu and elsewhere have a clear and cogent understanding about what are the demarcated responsibilities of a councillor or a panchayat member, a member of legislative assembly, a member of parliament? I'm not even going into government. I'm not even going into the executive arm of government. Now, according to me, having worked closely in politics for about 10 years or so, I would humbly say that people do not understand. I've seen members of parliament offices flooded with requests about garbage collection, about the street lamps not working, about piped water not coming through, so on and so forth. I would say that people do not have a clear understanding, and it is the work of your organizations, many of whom here have spoken before me, that I think is changing that, and I hope that that happens, because as you all will perhaps understand, and sort of to go back to Ms. Charu Govindan's point about devolving responsibilities, it is important for people to know what a member of parliament is supposed to do, which is to legislate in the parliament, and what a member of the legislative assembly is supposed to do, and finally what a councillor or a corporator is supposed to do. So I think that is something that I hope will change, and I do believe it is somewhat changing as people do understand, and there is greater sort of civic sense and advocacy around these areas. Now, with regard to urban transformation, which is sort of, I guess, if I could paraphrase today's theme and discussion topic, the DMK, our manifesto, the detailed state manifesto will be out tomorrow, and I promise you there will be some very interesting aspects that we've covered. But I can tell you that we have already identified 3 overarching areas for what I would call urban transformation in Tamil Nadu. These 3 areas are have been identified by us based on discussions with many organizations and experts such as yourselves, and finally coming to an understanding what can be done and what should be done on a priority basis. Firstly, the DMK has proposed to significantly improve piped drinking water across urban areas. Now, in across Tamil Nadu, an additional 36 lakh houses require piped drinking water facility, which would then help our pipe drinking water percentage go up from a measly 35%, which it is now, to close to 75%. This is possible through the Jal Jeevan scheme instituted by the union government, and we hope that we can make a significant contribution in this aspect. The two other aspects which we've identified for immediate attention, should we be elected into the state government in a month's time, is that of putting into place a functional solid waste management system. Urban areas, as you know, generate tremendous amounts of solid waste. Of course, as of now, even under the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan mission or Swachh Bharat Mission Urban, there's been very little in terms of that's being done to take care of solid waste management, and we hope that we will be able to put in a effective system in this regard. Of course, many other cities outside Tamil Nadu are doing and leading by example. So this is not something new, but we hope that we can do that. And finally, we've focused on providing close to 10 lakh additional low-cost housing in urban areas. Again, this is being done, or this is proposed to be done to reduce the slum population, which is at 16.6%, down to 5% over the next 10 years or so. Like I said, I know we do not have much time, and I know there is an interactive session that is being planned as well. But let me just conclude by saying that I'm very grateful, not only for the opportunity to speak here, but also to listen to all of you. And I hope you realize that I was listening and I did take some notes, and I will definitely communicate those. And though the manifesto is already finalized, we will, if we are elected to power, try and put into place many of the ideas and thoughts that have been expressed in this seminar. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manraj. I don't know about the others on the panel, but I feel like I know a secret. I know a secret of what your manifesto is going to say tomorrow already. So that's good. It's the reason we are a bit cynical about political parties participating in the election season and so on is because the elections have become such a big, high profile, high voltage kind of events. There's a competitive populism, all kinds of things happen during the elections where we forget, where things actually stand, why we are actually holding the elections. But DMK as a party has always been very rooted to the ground and, introduced legislation that became role model for many other states and so on and so forth. But one thing I'm not hearing from all the things you're saying is talking about piped water, you're talking about housing. But how will you do all these things without strengthening the third tier of governance itself? Why is that itself not a main point of your manifesto? Let me put it another way. The party machinery, your committees, your president of the party and district committee secretaries, all of that system, you are fully decentralized. That's how you are running your elections. You're one of the oldest parties in India with a systematic approach to, voter outreach and all of that. You're one of the best political, machineries in the country. So you do see the benefits of decentralization when it comes to participating in elections and winning elections and so on. But how come you don't see the same thing when it comes to governance and strengthening the local self-government, increasing participation of citizens? Why is this language not being used as much, if I may ask?
Well, just to answer that question very quickly, if I may, when a thing is said to be done by law, there is no need for us to say that explicitly in the manifesto. I hope you remember that when I began my talk, I did acknowledge, I think, some of the earlier comments made by Ms. Charu Govindan and others in this regard. There is no doubt that whichever party comes into power in whichever state in India, I think decentralization, devolution of powers, and greater financial fiscal autonomy to local bodies, to grassroots bodies is sine qua non for better governance and administration. I don't think there's any dispute in that. But the reason we don't spell these things out, it is like saying that, you have to every day start your day by saying, I will not commit a crime today. So this is already laid out in the Constitution. It's already laid out. I agree that in the past that perhaps we've not been able to do, and as the two political parties, or as one of the two political parties in power since 1967, we take responsibility for that. But we do appreciate the need for it. I think especially in the last, I would say in the last 15, 20 years, there's been a greater push for decentralization. I wouldn't say that we've not done anything at all. And I don't think we need to be reminded about our own party's internal structure or analogies drawn to that for us to realize that the horse of our party's internal structure, even if we had a very ungrassroots structure, we would still believe in what the constitution asks us to do, and we will do that.
The only reason to bring it up is that there have been no elections in the past 5 years, and that just if it's written in the constitution
I will not take responsibility for that. I've been magnanimous enough to take responsibility for other things today, but for the lack of elections, I think Prashant and Charu have quite nicely explained, so I won't go into that. I think it's very simple. You have to ask the people who should have held the election, including the state election commissioner appointed by the ADMK government, why they've not held elections, or why they've held elections for rural but not urban. Nevertheless, the other point that I also made during the course of my remarks, which touched upon some aspects of Ms. Charu's remarks, which is that do people really understand which responsibility ends where and whatnot. Often we see MPs' offices flooded with requests about, solid waste management. Now, so in that case, what is the role of the councillor in that particular ward? It's taken some time. I don't know the reasons for it, nor am I attributing any, but it's taken us a lot of time for people to understand where these roles and responsibilities lie. Why do you go to the mayor? Why do you go to the ward committee? And when do you go to the MLA or the minister? So it's this, and I hope that once these things clarify and get better, and of course that cannot happen only through government or political parties, the active participations of advocacy and civil society organizations strengthens this resolve and effort to, and really, I think that is the essence of participatory governance. And I hope that we can, in spirit, lead the way in that as well.
Yes, absolutely. I really appreciate your comments and your generously taking responsibility for things that you should be. And unfortunately, the ADMK spokesperson couldn't join us. So you probably got some of the questions that we had in tank for him. So before I let you go and go to the other panelists, one last thing I want to ask you is that if the DMK comes back to power, and best of luck to all of you, because that's what all the polls seems to be suggesting. And I've made a note that Tamil Nadu will be a state that will have a chief minister who has been a mayor in the past, and that can be a good thing for urban governance because of the experience Mr. Stalin had as a mayor of Chennai. So now, will you then hold to the letter and spirit of the constitution and the Tamil Nadu municipal laws with respect to holding the elections, ward committees, area sabhas? Do you think that all of these things will begin to happen as and when if assuming that your party comes back into the political power?
Without a doubt, I can give you complete assurance on behalf of my party and a commitment, but these will. They did not happen for the simple reason, if for anyone following Tamil Nadu politics, and for those of you who haven't, I do not want to bore you, but from the time of the death of their former Chief Minister Jayalalitha, ADMK has been in a total mess, and they've in fact pushed the elections till the very last minute. Then the Supreme Court literally directed them to hold elections, upon which they actually split the elections, local body elections, into two and held it only for the rural, and still did not hold it for the urban. And of course, in the intervening period, there was the pandemic and the lockdown, and naturally those restrictions didn't help. But without a doubt, whichever government comes in is bound to hold elections. And to be fair, I'm arguing just on logic here, whichever government, Party A, Party B, or Party C comes to power in the month of May, of course, buoyed by that sort of overwhelming support that they would have gotten from the people of Tamil Nadu, they would naturally want to hold the elections sooner. In political terminology, there is that political honeymoon period, right? The first 3 to 6 months. Even I would say would be the perfect time. If I was a political advisor, I would say, if and Mr. Srinivas's party was to win the election, I would say please hold it in the first 3 to 6 months, so people are still happy with you, and you can go ahead and set up your panchayats and your corporations and your municipal corporations and bodies and so on. So I don't think there is any doubt. Like I said, I cannot speak for my colleague from the ADMK who did not turn up, but definitely from the DMK's point of view, we will hold the election. As you know, the rural body elections have been held, and there's, I think, about 1.5 years in. But definitely for the urban bodies, they need to be held at the very earliest. There is just no reason when you can hold a state assembly election at the fag end of a pandemic, or perhaps, who knows, maybe we are up on a resurgent wave of a pandemic. There is no reason why a local body election should not be held. And of course, all the points that all of you have made with regard to decentralization and empowering local bodies and therefore enhancing participatory governance is made out. So I don't think any political party can actually deny these or counter these. It is just for purely malified reasons that they decided not to hold elections, which of course, we don't agree with. But here we are. This is the government we've had for the last 4 years, and this is how much we've suffered.
Okay, fair enough. So I'm now ready to open it up for all the audiences. I request the admin to bring in all the participants on the camera, whoever wishes to turn on their camera, and they can start asking their questions to anyone on the panel. As that gets set up, I invite Vachna, Maitreyi, Chinmay, any of you have any questions, you can also shoot. I have one question. Any of you can take it. What has been the experience with the direct mayor system, right? You had a direct mayor election for some time, on again, off again, taken off. Do people remember those things as it was good when we had a direct mayor, we need to bring it back? Or is it a forgotten thing and people are happy with the mayor and council system? Any of you have any thoughts on this? Yuvraj, Prashant, Charu, and of course, Mr. Manuraj too.
Yeah. So we have been seeing the direct and indirect elections happening alternatively for every election. And like last time in 2016, the final thing was to make it happen as an indirect election. But again, in 2019, October, they again made it as direct election. And again, the very next month, they made an ordinance to make it as an indirect election. One thing I see here is in case of a direct election, we are going to have a mayor who is going to sit as a mayor for 5 years for sure. That is going to be that's going to be a sure thing. But when it comes to an indirect election, there are chances for councillors to switch sides because anti-defection law doesn't apply for local bodies. It's only for the parliament and assemblies. So there are chances that councillors can switch sides, and there are chances the mayor himself herself will change in the 5 years term. So there is a lack of stability when it comes to indirect election for mayors. And I wish whatever party comes to power, they conduct a direct election for all the urban local bodies.
Srinivas?
Yes.
Before audience ask question, can I ask a question to Mr. Manuraj from DMK? I just have a follow-up question after.
Please do.
Thank you for listening all of our points and elaborating. Actually, we were eagerly waiting for DMK's manifesto to be released today, but it didn't. So I am not able to look into the details. But what released last week, Mr. President of DMK, Mr. Stalin, has released a 10-year vision statement on 7 areas. And I have to say, I was looking because as a civil society group and as a collective, we have met the DMK's manifesto team and we went through all the, our demands with the manifesto team. And I was a bit disappointed to look into that 7 areas where you had 2 sections for urban development and rural development. The word empowering or decentralization was not there. And you said it's not there because it's all supposed to be done, but that's why it's not there. But the problem is for 25 years, it's not been done. So we are looking forward that to be the main agenda in the manifesto. Hope at least it's covered in the manifesto. We're looking forward to that. And one more thing you said is people didn't know the difference between the roles of MP, MLA and councillors. And even the MP election, people are asking for sewage and solid waste management. And so whose responsibility it is to educate the people and sensitize the people? Is it the NGOs and civil society groups or the political parties? And look at our neighbor state, Kerala. like, when the 1992, the law was passed and 74th amendment came, they started people plan campaign. It didn't come from the NGOs, didn't come from civil societies. It came from the government. The people plan campaign actually had the very, very deep effect in sensitizing the people and making them understand how they can participate in the governance, how they can participate in the planning. So that initiative has come from the government side and the political will. That is what we are looking from one of the major parties of Tamil Nadu, because for the last 10 years, it has been the ADMK government. If DMK government is coming, and this is the changes we wanted to see, and it was actually a disappointment seeing that vision statement, sir. I have to accept that. Thank you.
To be fair, this is the problem when only one political party turns up, then we have to speak for everyone. And it's difficult when we've not been in power for 10 years. But nevertheless, in the spirit of this discussion, I will try and answer these questions. Yes, I just reiterate what I said. You do not require to say that you must decentralize, because that is, like I said, understood, and it is a part of the constitutional duty. It's unfortunate it hasn't been done yet so far in a sufficient manner and measure. And like I said, I hope that will change. I do not know enough about the People Plan campaign, but it definitely sounds interesting. But I think in my earlier remarks also, I specifically said that it is something that we all need to take to the people. It is the role of the political parties, but equally it is also bolstered by the advocacy done by NGOs and other civil activism groups. So it is not any one particular person's role, but of course, if you look at it from an education point of view, then these sort of civic education aspects need to be covered in school. Then you go back to saying who's designing the curriculum. Then we get into the state government and the central government and all of that. But of course, it is all of our duties. I was just pointing out to something which I noticed in the last 10 years, having worked in politics, that it seems like people are not very clear. So therefore, it seems like more MPs and MLA offices are burdened by requests to sort out issues which are actually local body issues. Of course, no MP or MLA will turn away these people, right? Because they are voters and they are people whose patronage we require. So they will try to go and sort it out. But of course, what I'm just trying to point out is in the natural political system, there are conflicts. It's not as clearly defined that, this is what the corporator does, so I will not do it. No MP will say, no, please go and see your councillor in ward number 44, because this does not come under my purview. Everybody tries to help. So all I'm trying to say is that sense of responsibility, the sense of where different people's functionalities stop and different other set of elected representatives functionality begin, is still evolving. That is my opinion, having based completely on my experiences, having worked in political offices, and that is all. Of course, I would love if we could do something similar to that People Plan campaign, if that is something that has worked in Kerala. Like I said, I don't know enough about it. I just Googled it on my laptop here. But it does seem something like something interesting, and perhaps something that more states could adopt.
Thank you. Thank you. There's another, it's a good time to bring up the People's Plan, of course, is legendary and it's almost 30 years old. There is also other mechanisms of participatory democracy apart from the ward committees and Gram Sabhas and area Sabhas, one of which the Janagraha has been closely involved for the past 5-6 years, is what's called the participatory budgeting program, or My City, My Budget. We just did it in Bengaluru just this past budget season, and in Visakhapatnam and in Mangaluru city. Mangaluru is also in Karnataka, Visakhapatnam is in Andhra Pradesh. What basically happens is that, people are fully aware of central budget and state budget. They know everything from what sari the finance minister is wearing to what color folder she's carrying and what sweet is being made in the office before the budget is being presented. Same with the state government budget. Lot of media attention, hype about the budget, the suitcase and all that kind of stuff. But actually the keys to the mosquitoes and to the drains and the footpaths are in the city budget, which nobody even knows when it comes and goes. So what Janagraha is trying to do is to elevate the profile of the city budget itself. And because unlike the central and state budget, citizens can actually meaningfully participate in creating the city budget. For a central or state budget, what can we say? At best, we can say that you need to make GST 0 for sanitary napkins because it's really a brain dead decision you made, or you can say something about excise duty being less or more, things like that, and industry bodies. But when it comes to city budgets, you actually can say that, look, in this part of the Coimbatore, we need to worry about the drainage issues. In this other part, the issue is not drainage, but it's walkability. There is no footpaths. There's long roads with dividers. Therefore, we must address that. You should be able to use the money effectively within the city based on the needs of the ever-growing, expanding cities. And this is a program we've successfully run, and it'll be wonderful to try to do this in Tamil Nadu as well. And now that Mr. Manuraj has been part of it and we've discussed this, hopefully we can talk about it at a later point of time when time permits. Anyone with a question? I know Mathura has a question. You are free to ask the question, Mathura. Chinmay, did you have a question?
Yeah. So Mr. Manuraj said that, generally people don't know the difference between what are powers of an MLA, corporator and an MP is. So a deeper systemic question that I want to ask you for this, like we have generally seen that MLA does the work of a corporator or MP does the work of a super corporator. Do you think that the reason for this can be the anti-defection law and the issue of whip, because the whip's position is so powerful and MLAs don't have much power in the legislature. Their main power is lawmaking. Just because they don't have much power of lawmaking, that is why just to have their political existence, and obviously as they are catering to the same electorate as the corporate, that is the reason that they have to get into the shoes of a corporator, because their role in the legislature is actually decreasing, because that is concentrated by the whip and the anti-defection system.
It's a very interesting question because I am particularly interested in the concept of defection, anti-defection, and the application of whips, but also on the role of legislators, both in the parliament and the state assembly. I partly agree to what you've asked, which is that, yes, we have over the last 70 years diminished the roles of legislators. So non-government MLAs have very little in terms of what they can show as a report card. Now, let us say I'm an opposition MLA or a member of parliament. What is it that I can actually show to my constituents of having done when the state government or the central government does not at all pay heed to my request? So over the years, as you would know very well, they evolved the Member of Parliament Local Area Development Scheme, the MP LADS, and in Tamil Nadu, I think it is called the Constituency Development Scheme, MLA CDS or MLA CAS, something like that. Now, of course, the essence of this is the same, right? We've made legislators into quasi-executive functionaries, but like I said, that sort of, I hope, partly answers. Or at least that's the logic why they've become stepped into the shoes of executive members when they should not have, and their focus should have been in lawmaking. Another problem with the legislature and the parliament is the number of days that they work. They work less than 100 on average, the parliament. The state legislature works, I think, 40 or something. It's horrendous. So by and large, most of these people are not lawmaking. In fact, they are, lawmaking for a lesser part of the year than more. So they are actually back in the constituency, sorting out issues that are of importance and significance. Now, to answer your specific question, sir, about why a MLA would step into the shoes of the corporator, that is simple, because they want to make sure that no political mileage is ever lost. They make sure that they do get some good votes next time, or they do generate goodwill amongst their constituents. But in the last 20 years, I am not an expert in this field, but my humble hypothesis is this: because of the diminishing role of the legislatures, because of lack of complete understanding of the roles of the different elected representatives, and also because, in the last 5 years, where we've had no local body functioning in Tamil Nadu, MLAs and MPs have had to step into the shoes. But I hope that there will be a reversal of this trend, because I do not think it is good. And I do not think that is what the state assembly and the parliament were intended for. So I do hope there is a reversal of this trend, and we will see more local body corporators doing what they should. But by extension of your question, even the local body corporators should not be doing executive function. They should only be making local laws. If you see the United States of America, I know it's a bad analogy, but let us say, for example, they have some of the most decentralized systems, and most of the taxes are decided at the most local level, at the most decentralized level. And they are not the ones who are doing the executive functioning. They are not the ones sorting it out. Unfortunately, if you study the system that we have at the moment, most legislators are part executive functionaries. Unfortunately, I do not know if that will change completely, but I definitely think in the large scale, in the large picture, that should start changing a little bit, and we should let the executive arm do the executive function and the legislative arm do the legislative function. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's a very factual but a very sad commentary on the parliamentary democracy we have at this moment. I invite Yuvraj and Prashant to jump in any point of time if you want to add your own comments to anything that Mr. Manuraj said or any other thing in the earlier conversation. By all means, I think you haven't spoken on the direct mayor thing, Prashant and Charu. If you want to comment on that, or this this differences of the legislators. I do agree with Mr. Manuraj on the need for civic learning and understanding the roles of different levels of legislatures and all of that. While I asked all of you civil society members what your expectations are from the political parties in the coming elections, I kind of already know the answer, in the sense that unless you put enough pressure on the political parties, they are not going to respond to that. They are not going to come out and say, we are going to do this, we are going to do that, unless and until they think that that is going to bring them votes, right? So when they think that decentralization and ward committees will also help them strengthen their government and bring them lots of votes, for them it's not going to be top of the list. So there is a role that we as civil society organizations also need to play to elevate the discussions, right? They have rightly identified drinking water as the issue. They've rightly identified, urban issues in general, right? Homes, affordable housing and things like that. But underlying all these issues is the local government. But because people are not asking for that, they're asking for water. They don't care whether it is Narendra Modi that will build it or Stalin that will build it. They just want water. So whose job is it to convey to them that this is how the drinking water system works? This is how the municipal governance can help in getting, clean, potable drinking water that doesn't, require you to dry up all the groundwater, but you can do rainwater, all of those things. So I'm personally interested in learning more about how you guys are. Prashant talked about Arapur and, educating citizens in the wards and all of that. What is your views on continuing this? And I think the last thing I would say is that he's given you, all of you, and I'll add myself to this list, all of us, a very big hint, which is the first 3 months of the new government is a honeymoon period. So I think you should better get cracking and figure out what to get in this honeymoon period from the next government. So your thoughts and your thinking around this, please.
So,
sorry to jump in here. May I please be excused? I have another commitment at 7 p.m., but I really enjoyed the discussion, and I hope we can be in touch. Thank you so much.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Manraj. On behalf of Janagraha and everyone here, we really appreciate you taking the time, and you are really in the right party at the right time for people like us to engage with and interact with. We appreciate your patience and excellent commentary, and we look forward to connecting with you.
So, Srinivas, to your question about whether it's time, for direct mayor elections or which is better, I think it's time ripe for power devolution to people, and that's what I think is the most important thing that we need to be talking about. So that coming out of a political party's mouth, or in the form of their manifesto or whatever, is the most critical thing that we are actually looking for. For this to become a populist issue, we are a long way off from that. Okay, just from our own experience, right? We've run so many campaigns. The citizen movements in Tamil Nadu. We've run so many campaigns. Charuman knows about it. Sata Panchayat knows about it, right? We've all been part of that. But however, this seems to be a little dry subject for the people. They don't understand the implications or, the structures that we so fondly talk about and things like that. So it's very difficult, as it is, corruption itself is seen as, a dry subject. So in that space, when you talk about Ward Sabhas and area Sabhas, they don't really know about all these things. But all that comes to their mind is, two party symbols and, some party faces to associate with. So that's also one of the reasons why, we need to get rid of this banner culture and, this leadership worship that's happening in Tamil Nadu. So it's a long way off, but we are trying everything whatever we can. But yeah, we should see what happens next.
It's very, very honest and very true. I mean, this is the truth of the matter, right? MLA lads, MP lads, all of these things are a complete distortion of constitution. And I would, I would bet that they're anti-constitutional if you ask me. But then the parliament itself passed a law on it. So what can we say? If all the people that want to do something bad get together and they have the power to pass a law, there's nothing much you can do at that point of time. So yeah, so this is the reality of the situation. Yuvraj, you want to come in? It looks like you want to say something.
Yes, exactly. So it is the same government that got 73rd and 74th Amendment, and it was the same government that got MP lads. So it is the compensation that they gave to the MPs and MLAs, because MPs and MLAs were losing power at the local level because of the implementation.
Very good.
And that's the compensation that Narasimha has to give, because he was running a minority government at that point of time. So that's one thing I wanted to.
We took away the apple from you, so here is a chocolate. Now be happy.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, go ahead, Char.
Yeah, I'll just add quickly here. So we see a solution as a participative democracy, right? But for the participative democracy to establish and flourish, people have to participate, and they need to be politicized and they need to be sensitized. So that's a bigger this thing. I just like to bring a quick note of in Hindu they run this constituency watch, right? Because the election season, every day they put a constituency. So it was very interesting. Few days back I looked at the Pallavaram constituency, and you know what was the demand there? The Pallavari constituency people wanted to attach Pallavaram to the Chennai Corporation, because they see that is the only way for their area to be having all kind of infrastructure development. So that is the understanding people have. If they want any development, they want to get attached to the Chennai Corporation. So because that is where the power is centralized. So they want, so instead of making to empower and strengthen their own municipality, they are asking, we are going to vote a party which is going to promise us that if we come to our power, we will attach the Pallavaram as to Chennai Corporation. So that is the failure of our, that is the core reason for our plight where we are now. So we
I can predict what will happen in 2026. The conscience of Pallavaram will say, can we be Pallavaram and not be part of Chennai? That's what they're going to ask.
So I don't know. I
this
was
is what
actually
Whitefield is asking right now in Bengaluru.
Yeah, it was actually a very sad thing. I don't know whether to laugh or this thing, but that is where the plight of the state. So that is why in the manifesto we asked for, like, you know, a separate institution like a Kerala Institute of Local Administration. We want something in Tamil Nadu which is going to research and which is going to work with people, build the capacity for on the, you know, administration side and representation side, and also look into working with, you know, people, because as civil society groups or NGOs, we can only have so much we can do, but when the political will combined only. So as Voice of People, we are also planning to start our work with the high school students, because we don't have hope on the current population or the elder population. At least catch them young, the high school students, as a citizen, how you can participate in ward committees and what kind of questions you can ask, how you can participate in the participatory budgeting. So we are kind of going to focus on some of our energy working with high school students so that they become sensitized and informed citizens.
Certainly, I should certainly have a conversation with some of the people in Janagraha that work on a similar thing called Bala Janagraha, or civic learning part of Janagraha. It will be something, but don't bet too much on the young people, because the older generation is going to be here for a long time. The life expectancy has increased dramatically, especially in advanced states. So we also have a job to work with the existing demographic and people. I think from my perspective, based on my prior experience in all of this, is that people are not really tuned into the language that those of us in these echo chambers, in these conversations of the governance are involved in, right? They are talking in another language. They're talking the same content, but using a different narrative, different language. When those of us that seek the change, or you want to be the voice of the people, then the voice is only as big as the number of people that are giving that voice. So we need to understand what these people are trying to do, and then try to convey to them in a sense that, what is the connection between, say, ward committee, or Prashant talks very passionately about people power and giving more powers to the people and all of that. But my own observation is that a lot of people don't want it. I don't know what to do with it. If you give me, I think, I don't, in Bengaluru, I had this strangest experience of it, trying to fight for ward committees, and many of the ward committees, not enough citizens go there. It's a fact. They don't participate. They complain a lot, but when the institution is there, not many are willing to put the time and energy into that. So it's always going to be a small set of people that are willing to go that extra mile to participate in governance. But if we catch a large enough bucket of people like that through all of your activities, then the percentage of that people, right? Chennai is more than 1 crore population. I'd always say if 1% of Bengaluru is civic aware, you got the problem solved. 1% of Chennai is all you need. You don't need 99% of everyone in Tamil Nadu to be aware of all of these things. But and today it's probably at 0.001%, and we need to go 100 times more than where we are right now. Prashant, I know you have another engagement. Any final thoughts? I will come to all the speakers, assuming that there are no further questions. It's just a final take by all of you, and then we close it. And feel free, any of you on this call, feel free to ask question anytime. And it'll be nice to have you guys on camera, because we have a tradition on City Politics to take a group picture on Zoom. So it doesn't look very nice if there are only names and no faces. So as our speakers give their final comments, I request all of you to turn on your camera for a brief moment, so the amazing photography team at Janagraha can take a group picture. Go ahead, Prashant.
Yeah, so on the lighter side, Charu ma'am's comment on Pallavaram, I think the people of Pallavaram have become very intelligent. They know that their local body will never reform, and the atrocities of that local body, we are all witnessing every day in the papers. So they've decided that only way to reform themselves is to move to another municipality. So physically they can't move. So they've decided to get Chennai Corporation to their aid, right? So that's the, I think that's the state of Pallavaram municipality, in other words.
Okay, any final comments about this whole topic, Prashant?
No further comments. I honestly hope that the elections will, state elections will trigger the municipality elections as well. And going forward, and during the run up to those elections, municipality elections, we'll be able to place our demands as a group, and push for the much needed reforms on the local body level. That's about it. Thanks.
Great. Yuvraj?
Yeah, just add one more thing on Charles' note on Pallavaram. if Pallavaram is added to Chennai Corporation, then the Greater Chennai Corporation might become Greatest Chennai Corporation. And just to conclude, we at Satta Panchayat Ekam was working with Kamal Hassan's Makkal Needhi Mayam for their manifesto specific to local bodies. So they have released 7 points for urban local bodies and 7 promises for rural local bodies. So with specific to urban local bodies, some of the points that we proposed to them included right to recall, which is already in place in states like Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, and Bihar as well. And one more thing is salary for the local body representatives. It is a case in Kerala. In Kerala,
what are you proposing? How much salary are you proposing?
Somewhere around like 15,000 or 20,000. I think in Kerala it's around that. That's the salary they give in Kerala.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
And implementation of area committees and ward sabhas. That's one key thing which it is in paper, but on ground it is not happening. At least in this election, Grama Sabha is a talking point because Stalin is also conducting Grama Sabha meetings, and it is a campaign meeting, but it is in the name of Grama Sabha. So slowly it should come to the urban areas as well. And few more things that I expect to happen is the devolution of powers and funds. So in the beginning, Vachna was presenting about the State Finance Commission. So in 1996, one of the recommendations of State Finance Commission is to increase the devolution of funds from 8% to 12%. That was at the end of 2001. It should have been 12%. But the second Finance Commission, again, it was still at 8%, and the recommendation was to increase from 8 to 10%. And the third State Finance Commission, they recommended to increase it from 8% to 9%. So even the Finance Commission have started reducing their recommendation level. Right now, it's around 10%. I wish they bring it to at least 30% of states' own tax revenue, because centers devolving 42%. States should devolve at least 30% to the local bodies, which is a collective of almost 1.3 lakh representatives in Tamil Nadu alone. So I think that will help more funds to reach.
Sounds like a very progressive manifesto for local bodies from M&M, and please do share it publicly into this group. We'll be very excited to be part of that sort of exercise, and I think you should take it to all parties, not just to this, but I know that right now there is a certain party that you're working closely with, but that shouldn't stop you from sharing it with all other parties as well. Charu, before I go to Charu for the last word, anyone in the audience? I see Mr. Ajay, Mr. Ganeshan, Harsha. Any of you have any points to make? This is your chance. Or just to say hello. Okay, they just said hello on mute, so I'll take it. Okay, over to you, Charu, and then to Maitreyi to close it all.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much to the Janagala team for creating space for such democratic dialogues, because that is what lacking in this democracy, a space for democratic dialogues, irrespective of religion and all other noises, purely on governance and how to improve accountability and demand transparency. So as a closer notes, I will see it's a very, very long way to go ahead, but we have to make small steps. Each step counts. So at this point, this election, we are sure we have made enough noise as civil society groups that we will get ward committees and area sabhas in the urban local bodies for sure. But are they going to be empowered? Are they going to be sufficient? Are they going to have all kind of revolution? That's a next step. But first, we will have the platforms for sure, because we have worked with all the political parties. We have sat with M&M or Santosh Babu sir also and went through all those things. And one more thing I need to know is the media. Somewhere we need to sensitize the media too, because when we were doing this manifesto press release, one of the question came was, what's going to come is assembly elections. Why are you guys talking about local governance decentralization? What do you say about this? That was the question. Is that this is an assembly election, and why are you guys talking about decentralization of local governance? And I think we need to write the book like Dummies, Local Governance for Dummies, because decentralization to the local bodies has to be happened by the legislators who is going to form the assembly. So that kind of the society and media and people we are living in, but this is our society and we need to go together. I think the only way is we need to stay as loud as possible as citizens, as informed citizens, and we have to be more loud by, as you said, we need to increase like-minded people to add to the voice and being loud. And this long way will be challenging, but it will be interesting too. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Char. Before I hand it back to Maitreyi, I would like to reaffirm on behalf of Janagraha that we are very keen to encourage, support, participate, embolden anyone, anywhere in India that is working on participatory governance, municipal finances, strengthening of urban systems. We will be there. And the best time to do these things is when a new government comes into play, and we look forward to collaborating with all of you that are part of this in any number of ways so we can all achieve the local self-government. Thank you, and over to you, Maitreyi.
Thank you, Srinivas. I would actually like to continue with the point that Srinivas made, saying at Janagraha, we'll continue to stand with people who are working in the space of participatory governance. And what better way to take participatory governance? Because when you collaborate and deliberate with people, you learn from each other's experience and expertise, and you just get better outcomes out of it. So I think this was a fantastic way for us to talk about participatory governance with, even though we had only one party representative today, we still had CSO representation, citizen representation, and party representation. And I think that is a good way to talk about participatory governance and take it forward from there. I'd like to thank everybody who was a part of the panel discussion today, specifically to all the panelists who have taken time out in their busy schedules and joined us for this discussion. I also want to thank all the participants and engaging with the panelists as well. I would like to specifically thank and appreciate the guidance and effort that has been put into by Srinivas and Vachna in organizing this event. I also want to specifically call out the efforts that has been put in by the team at Janagraha itself. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chinmay, Pratima, Sandhya, Vishwa, and Maha. And I'm sorry if I've missed out on anybody, but thank you, everybody who is a part of the event today, and have a very, very good evening.
Good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Bye. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.